Hello. Today I'm going to talk to you about what services are available to people who are planning a move abroad and how you can tell whether or not you need these services. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Patricia Brooks. I'm an American who has been living in France for 8 years. And I came on a sabbatical initially. Now I help people who are ready to start their next chapters living and thriving in a foreign country find the confidence and courage to do that. And on my channel, I talk about my life in France, about moving abroad, and how to live the kind of life you know you deserve to live, but sometimes feel afraid to pursue. And today I'm going to be talking about the different kinds of services available to people who are moving abroad and how you can tell whether or not you need them. All right. Now, first off, I am celebrating my 8-year anniversary being here in France. I'm recording this on January 25th, 2026, and it feels really good. It feels strange that I'm saying that I've been here an entire 8 years, but that is the case. But before I was able to claim that, I did, in fact, get help before I moved to France, because in 2014 and 2015, I had this desire to move to France. I told myself one day I'm going to live in France. But 2015, 2016, I didn't do a whole lot to make it happen. I didn't look at my visa options. I didn't look at my finances. All I knew was I wanted to live in France and I wanted to speak French. But in 2017, I realized I was stuck, and I was angry at myself for not having made more progress. And having been trained as a life coach, I knew that coaching is something that could help me. I knew I was blocked. And so I hired a life coach, not somebody who was trained to help expats make a move abroad like I am, but somebody who was a general life coach. But it worked, because on our second call, she unblocked something that I probably never would have. I had a money block. I wanted to do this thing, but I was afraid to look at my finances. I was afraid to use the finances that I actually did have available to me. And in working with her, that kind of got my foot off the brake and onto the gas pedal. And a year later, I was living in France, right? So it was definitely something I need. And this sort of help is the kind of help that I typically help people with. There are other services that I offer that I will talk about a little bit later. But if you're telling yourself, and have been for the last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or maybe even more, one day I'm going to move abroad, then you might be stuck and you might need a service like a life coach. All right. But before I go any further, I just want to share with you that it is really overwhelming making a move abroad. And so knowing what sort of help that you might need, because there are lots of different services, can be daunting. And I have a Pathfinder guide that can help you through this process, because the first thing that you really need to know before you hire anybody is exactly where you are in your move abroad process. And this Pathfinder guide is a 19-page PDF that you can download free of charge that will help you identify that. By answering the questions, you will learn where you are in the process and what sorts of resources or what sort of help you might need to consider at those points in your process. All right. And if you're interested in figuring that out, knowing where you are, then you can download that by going to thecouragecatalyst.com/Pathfinder. And I'll also put a link to that in the description of this video. All right. So once you know where you are on your path, then it becomes a lot clearer on what sort of help you might need. Okay. So let's unpack what is out there. I'm going to start with the most obvious, and that is help attaining a visa. There are immigration services, there are visa services out there to help people move through that process. This was not something that I used because, in large part, because my training is project management. And so what I did was I went to the official French website and I looked at the different kinds of visas that were available and my situation and the documentation that was required. And I said, okay, I can do this. I can pull together this documentation. I can follow this process. And that's what I did. However, if that's not your background, that's not your strong suit, and you feel like the help of somebody who knows what they're doing to maybe even guide you in choosing the right visa could be helpful, then that could be what you do. You could have a consult with them to see what they offer, how much they charge, and whether or not it's really made for you. Okay? So that is one type of service. Now, I caveat this because you're going to have to pull the papers together. You're going to have to go to the visa appointment on your own, right? That's not something that you can pay somebody to do for you. But there's still value. There still can be value if you choose the right service and do your due diligence. I have spoken to a few people who have used services like this and have been very, very satisfied. And I have worked with clients in my program who have used services like this and were sorely disappointed with the service they got, especially for the amount of money they paid. One woman applied for the visa, went to her visa appointment, and was denied for a very simple reason that the visa service should have pointed out and said, no, you're not ready to go for this appointment. You need to do this thing here before you apply. And it was costly, financially, because the service wasn't cheap, but it was costly on another level, on the level of confidence, because if you go to a visa appointment, it's always a scary proposition. And then you're declined. You start to question whether or not you'll be able to qualify for any kind of visa. So it was costly on the emotional level as well. The other woman used a similar service, and was advised to go for a visa that was more complex than she probably should have gone for, but relied on the advice of this service that, has some years behind it, and got the visa. But then when she was living in France, realized, oh, this is something that I need to do a whole lot more as I build my business here. And maybe this wasn't quite the right visa. And so after living in France for a year, she learned so much about herself and her business and has decided to move back to the US to regroup and will apply for a visa that is less complex. And so I share these two stories so that you ensure that you do your due diligence if you hire somebody to help you with the visa process, okay? With any service for that matter, all right? So you've got the immigration or visa services that are out there. You can also hire somebody to help you to find an apartment. And this is particularly helpful in markets where the housing market is tight, like a Paris. I did not use a service like this because of the kind of housing that I am in, but it can be quite helpful. They can be pricey, but in order to have a place to live, to show on your visa that you have a place to live, they can be quite helpful. Once again, do your due diligence. Now, other services out there are insurance services. Finding a broker to help you get the insurance that you will need to move abroad, such as health insurance, maybe you need renter's insurance, is not a bad idea. Using a broker, they look at all of the insurance services they have available to them, and they look at your situation and what will be required and help you to select the insurances that you actually need. All right. So, and in fact, I'm going to be speaking to an insurance broker. I'm going to have a live stream coming up in February of 2026. So stay tuned for more information about that. Now, this isn't a service that is a move abroad service, but it is a service that I did use in my first a couple of years living in France. And that was, I hired somebody who knew French taxes and who knew American taxes and could help me file my French tax declaration. Now, it was pricey, and so I could only do this the first couple of years because became cost prohibitive for me. But I think it was an investment well spent, because the first year I submitted my tax declaration, the tax office here was not well versed on, my particular situation, came back and said I owed taxes when in fact I didn't. My tax professional gave me the statement I needed to send to them so that they could understand where their error was. And the second year, it was the same thing. They hadn't quite figured it out. But the third year, they came back saying I didn't owe, and that was fine. So I was eventually able to do my French taxes on my own. I actually do use the help of the tax office here, but that's an example of something that you may need if you're moving to France, once you move to France. Okay. And finally, if you are moving abroad and you're going to be starting a business from scratch, a service that might interest you are services that help people to build businesses. I actually used the service not to create the business that I was going to be doing here in France, but to help me bulletproof my business plan before I applied for that visa, the Profession Liberale visa. And also, once I got that visa, she set up my business here in France, through the official website. And that was very helpful. Additionally, if you are new to the business game or entrepreneurial game and you don't really know how to build a business, it can save you years if you find a decent business coach who can help you to vet the business that you think that you want to start. They can help you to build a market research plan and work that plan so you can validate your business idea. And I actually did this. This was something I did while I was in France, because I moved to France on a sabbatical and then decided I was going to start my business here. But while it was an investment, it was well worth it, because it helped me to see that, yes, my business idea was viable. It helped me to create a plan to start a beta so that I didn't invest a lot of time building a course that at the end of the day was not valuable. I tested it out in real time. And it's something that I'm continuing to do today. So I think that there is definitely value in these services. But once again, buyer beware. Make sure it's something that you need. Make sure that the service is reputable. All right. So those are some services that you may want to engage as you plan your move abroad. I also want to share a little bit about what I offer so that you have some clarity there. As I said, I am a life coach, and I help people who are ready to start the next chapters of their lives living and thriving in a foreign country find the wherewithal to do it. A lot of times the logistical pieces seem like the only thing that you need, but moving abroad is a big life change. And if you are not prepared emotionally, mentally, if you have not created the kinds of habits that will set you up for success, you can find yourself struggling once you arrive. And so to that end, I have one-on-one coaching that helps you to make decisions, to plan your move, to stay accountable to the things that you're going to need to do, and to build that confidence and courage so that you can actually take steps and make it happen. I also offer another service that's not coaching, but it is centered around project management, project planning, because moving abroad is a project. And it is an overwhelming project with lots of moving parts. And so if you don't have this skill set, you may say, okay, I'm going to do this thing, but I don't even know where to start. This might be a service for you. I ask you questions on a questionnaire. You fill out those questions, and I create a project plan for you. We meet one time. We talk about the tasks that are in that plan, when you'll be able to do them based on what you've got going on in your life. And you walk away from that first session with your plan and your next steps of action. We meet again in a couple of weeks to see how you did and fill in the rest of the timeline, or as much of the rest of the timeline as we can, so that you have dates to be held accountable to. All right. So that's what I call my exit strategy planning session. And then finally, I have my signature group coaching program for single women who are making a move abroad, but who don't want to feel like they're all alone in doing this. And this is something that I wish I had when I made my move abroad, because while I did have coaching before I moved abroad, I didn't have support once I arrived. And once it felt like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've turned my life completely upside down. I'm in France. I don't know anybody. Was this such a good idea? It would have been nice to have a program of like-minded women, of a qualified life coach who could help me to put things into perspective. And that program is called the Carefree Expat Incubator Program. I do offer a few other things. If you're interested, you can go to my website at thecouragecatalyst.com. All right. So my final pointers are, first, know where you are in your move abroad process. And if you don't know that, then be sure to download the Pathfinder Guide. Go to thecouragecatalyst.com/Pathfinder, download your free PDF, answer the questions, see where you are in the process, and then what is recommended to be your next steps, and who you may, or what services you might need to consult. All right. And if it turns out that you're in the part of your process where consulting with me would be helpful, then go ahead and book your discovery call. All right. The second suggestion I have for you is, even though a service exists and it seems like it might make your life easier, ask yourself if it is really something that you need, or is it something that maybe is there for peace of mind. As I said, I didn't get help with the visa process in large part because project planning is in my skill set, and I didn't feel like it would add value. But if you feel like it would, and it would definitely make the move abroad happen for you, then go ahead and, perhaps book a discovery session with those services, several services, to see what they offer, and do a gut check afterwards to see if it's really something you need or it's just a nice to have. All right. So those are a couple of suggestions as you consider using somebody. There are other services as well that I have not mentioned. If you're making a move abroad, you're going to definitely want to look at the tax implications. So, consulting somebody who knows expat taxes could be helpful as well. All right. So that is all that I want to share with you today. What was most interesting for you about this video? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, subscribe to my channel if you have not already. And if you have, thank you so much. And I will see you again next time. Bye for now.